Hello, testing 1, 2, 3. Hi. So we're in the middle of a material study at the moment. I worked out some pretty nifty things. Basically, how to paint just about anything, I think, in an unstylized way. So I thought it'd be a good way to talk about what it is that I'm actually doing, because I think it can be quite helpful since this quote-unquote rendering process is quite obscure. Rather, it's so specific, it's kind of hard to convey exactly what you're doing to an audience, right? So it's also quite focus intensive, so I figured we'd talk through the ins and outs of setting up the page and what we're actually doing, and we can do a live paint through of a slightly simpler one or something. But we'll see how we get on. I'm thinking like a jellyfish or something might be quite straightforward, and because it takes up so much focus while I'm doing it that it might be a bit difficult if I do something like a rock or something. I don't know. As you can see, like this first one was a piece of bark that took a few hours of just ridiculous focus. So whilst one of the more straightforward, like one of the foods or something, would take a bit less time. So what are we talking about? We're gonna need to understand our setup here. So I've got, how many was this? 20 on a page? 40 circles on this base layer, which has this button enabled, which is clip mask. So you can see how all of this got really ridiculous all of a sudden. When you clip it down, you can only see the stuff that gets painted over the top of that grey circle here. Maybe it's a bit subtle because the background that I have is very similar. Some other tech we're going to need to understand are these drop-down menus, which are your... Okay, that's not showing. But you'll see here with soft light, add glow. These are your layer types, blending modes, I should say. You obviously don't get this in traditional art, but in digital, we're going to use them to convey certain effects a lot easier, in fact at all possible, because of the way the math works, and it basically lets you do a lot more things, very specific things, and does get a bit of getting used to understand what you're seeing. Let's talk about some of the brushes we're going to be using. So in this one I can't read Japanese. This is a flat brush that comes from Clip Studio Paint, the official. You see, when you draw, it comes out with these hard edges. And when talking about hard edges, it's like straight ones, right? But if I use something like a spray, you'll see it comes out with this kind of blurry edge. We'll also be using something like this. This is called a soft edge. We use this for blending. Okay. Smoothing things out. Right? We also use stuff like this Painterly blender, for example. And I find it's also quite helpful to have something textured, full stop, when we want to do something like wall, for example. Like, you can hand paint all of this if you want. It's just gonna take a long time, right? And we do want to move on with our lives a little bit, so we're gonna use a brush to help with that, right? So with all that in mind, what is it that we're actually doing with a material study, right? We're trying to paint realistically, get to the crux of what is the material, what is the defining characteristic that makes it feel like the thing that we want it to look like, right? Because all of these technically painted the same way, using the same brushes and the stuff that we've just mentioned, just picking a few different colors out, but the techniques and the processes involved are still the same. So in a functional perspective, on my other screen right now I have, if I put it up, okay, a couple of pictures of jellyfish, right? I don't know if it'll let me show it, but either way, what we're doing is gathering a selection of images of the thing that we're trying to texture, trying to draw, and we're essentially distilling what are the prime elements for making it look like the thing that we want it to look like. So shall we just do one? It might be easier to look through. Oh, right. I might use some jargon here regarding light and just various art terminology. It'll be easier to follow along if you understand the different things, such as what translucent light is, or being able to see values and things like that. It just makes it a lot easier to follow along, right? You can learn to do this at any point, but it makes it a lot more difficult if you are basing it off guessing, essentially, right? But if you understand the theory behind what it is we're trying to do, it all comes together like this, and you can kind of paint whatever you want, just using a couple of pictures. So I've just done a quick thing offhandedly. I don't know. So we're painting a jellyfish, right? We're gonna. So I've just noticed. Anyway. What are we doing? we're taking into consideration this thing. Now we're not technically aiming for a perfect circle, right? This is just the parameters that I've decided on. It just makes it nice and neat. You can use whatever shape you want. It doesn't have to be a sphere, but having a vague conceptual wrapper of a sphere, like this eye or this cherry, right? It makes it a lot easier to visualize what we're doing as we're doing it, right? So let's get into it. So from here, we're looking at pictures of jellyfish. I want to pick out a base mid-tone, something to get us started to work with, something in between the shadows and the light. I'm sure. We also don't really know what shape it's going to take. We're just plotting out the crux, right? The gist of what does a jellyfish kind of feel like? Not literally. What are the most important elements that we're going to be looking for when we paint the real deal in an actual illustration, in a full painting later, right? We're basically solving the problems ahead of time, right? Because these aren't meant to really look like anything per se, but they give us an insight into the techniques, the visual prowess. Is that too niche? It basically lets us see ahead of time potential pitfalls before they become an issue later, right? Is the gist. I should really walk through what I'm doing. So this is just to give a general shape, right? We got the dome. What's it called? The bell of the jellyfish? Maybe something representing the tentacles and bit of the dark ocean behind it, right, to make it pop later. Then we kind of pick out what's the next important thing when I'm looking at this jellyfish, right? I'm just trying to piece together something. It's a bit inconsistent because I'm seeing a lot of different colors. There's oranges and reds, blues, pinks, purples, right? So we're gonna aim for one of these glowy, bluey ones, right? And what can I see is like there's a ring on the center of most of them that sits around, right? I don't know if you can see my cursor, so I'm just gonna quickly, right, where the tentacles kind of protrude out from within. So we're not gonna make it look translucent yet. We're just plotting out the general structure of what we're trying to do, right? Maybe we can adjust the color a bit. Sorry, I said color, I mean value, tone, whatever you it's a little important, but right now we're just getting the shapes right. I can see around the outside edge there's like a very thin light blue-ish thing going on. Okay, this ooh, it's a bit bright, so we'll just notch it down a little bit. We can fix up the specific way it looks after. What we're doing here is the color blocking. You also notice my pen, when I turn it, it does this weird rotation. Don't know if that's coming across. So depending on how I move my hand, the mark looks different, right? One of the smaller tablets won't do that. This is something to bear in mind. It's not entirely necessary, and it isn't a feature for all the brushes, but this one from Clip Studio, it does it. Gives you a bit more fine control, right? Because I'm working on quite a large tablet at the moment. Right, so we're already we've not done much, but we've already got the idea of a jellyfish, right? Like, so we keep going. This is happening just because of the relationships that we've already placed down. Like, you really don't need a lot. Everything beyond it is going to be tidying it up, making it a bit more specific. What is this enunciation that I have, by the way? Don't worry about it. I'm not used to talking in front of a camera. Tried streaming once and it got very confusing. But that was before I really understood what I was trying to do. So maybe this would be a bit better. Right. So I found a nice image here. I can also see a bit of a wispiness going on inside. So what am I looking for? There's a little bit. So these are the brightest, right? If you're looking at any other point, this is kind of like deciding your highlight, the brightest point. Like, things you add on top of that probably won't be much brighter than it. However, I just want to make sure that I'm saying it correctly. You don't want to go in with a pure white, right? If you did that right away, sure, you get the brightness, right? Immediately we get that punch, but there's nowhere to go. The ceiling's already decided, right? So we want to pick something a bit slightly lower down to give us a bit more wiggle room later with all the blending modes after. In the same way, the darkest points you don't want pure black as well, right? It doesn't give you enough push or pull after to if you need to tweak it, you just can't, you have nowhere to go with it. I'm also noticing its edges. What should we do first for jellyfish? These are what we want to work out, right? Because every material is a bit different. I think I might have drawn a jellyfish at some point. I can't remember anymore. So I don't know if it's instinct or if I need to. Anyway, where does that come from? Is one of the answers that I'm trying to answer, right? I see lots of excuse me. It's like a membrane on the inside of the jellyfish, right? So I'm trying to work out what's going on there. Where does that exist, and how do I translate that into this image? Because what we're painting is completely different to what I'm looking at on the other screen, right? Because we're not looking to copy the painting. We're trying to understand what makes up a jellyfish right now, right? So I'm seeing like this wispy membrane that's similar to this outside, but it's slightly darker, ever so slightly darker around the edges of it, and I don't really know what I'm looking at is the thing. So now I'm gonna have to look for another image to try and work out what is it? what am I looking at? Right, and we just kind of keep cycling through different references until we can work out and piece together what exactly is it that this membrane looking thing is, if we can. And if we can't work it out, then we might need to do a bit of research. And from this other image, what I'm noticing is actually what I've drawn here is incorrect. Right? These circle things are actually kind of sitting inside this inner membrane. I don't know what it is exactly we're looking at, right? So that's a question we can answer later, should you wish. Because if you understand something about what you're looking at, you can do it a bit better, right? Because you know exactly what it is that you're trying to depict, right? Right now, I don't fully understand the jellyfish, but it doesn't really matter. You don't have to have perfect knowledge to be able to draw it. But if you do understand it better, you can then depict it more accurately, right? So it's almost like a ring of membrane around a smaller ring of membrane, and then the tentacles come out from it. If that makes sense. So I don't know, it looks like they're coming out from inside here, something like this. We'll just pop them in, put an extra one in there. Something like this. Now the next thing I'm trying to work out is what's going on with the opening of the jellyfish, right? Where this bubble thing, how does that work? Because it kind of looks like an inflated plastic bag, which, oh, that's convenient. We've already drawn this at another point, so we can kind of use that in the back of our knowledge, right? Like, oh, we've done something similar before. How did we do that, right? So how do you puff it out? Well, it's like some creases, bit of rounded shape, right? We're gonna try and visualize that in three-dimensional space now, which is the next tricky part, right? How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you do that while talking? Ah! I don't know. We'll just try to work it out. And I think that's the main key when you're doing something like this, right? Is I don't know, but I can work it out. And then you can use that as your kind of guiding light, right? Of how am I going to approach this problem? I don't know if these tentacles attach inside. Kind of looks like they're coming off the outer rim for some of these. Right, and I do think a lot of it is having the confidence to just work it out, right? And we do these so we have more confidence when it comes to a real painting later. Right, the more of these we can do ahead of time, the more confident we'll be feeling as and when it comes up, because it's like, oh, I've already drawn this. I kind of know what I'm doing with it. And even if it's something that is completely new, a subject that you aren't familiar with, you'll have the understanding of how you can begin to start approaching that problem. Because it's not feasible to have been able to draw absolutely everything under the sun, right? Like, this is way too much, right? But with the patterns of thinking, we can piece it together, right? Like half these things I've never drawn them before, but it doesn't really matter. So what are we doing? Try to map out where the brightest points are next, I guess. I think a lot of it is just feel it out. This might take an hour or two, I don't know. I picked the jellyfish because I thought it'd be easy. Turns out there's quite a lot going on. I didn't know that at the time, and you learn that from trying it, right? Okay, next important thing is probably the edges. Try to tidy some of this up a little bit, because I think we kind of got the shape roughly. Not really. I kind of want to get the inner membrane. I don't know how to. I keep calling it things. Really, it should be shapes. There's like an inner sphere that sits inside another sphere, right? Like, if we call it a jellyfish, we're going to start making decisions based on that. No, we should be making decisions based on what shapes we're seeing, what colors, right? What are the dynamics involved, right? I see a sphere, a small sphere sat inside a smaller sphere with 4 bright somethings, circles, half crescent shapes sat on top of the smaller sphere. Like, that's what we're trying to depict. How do we do that? It kind of doesn't look like anything, right? So if we stopped here, you see how it looks a bit untidy and it stands out? It doesn't quite look like anything at the moment. Every painting kind of has this moment where it doesn't look like a thing, right? And it's quite easy to get discouraged at this point when it's like it doesn't even look like what I'm trying to do. It doesn't even look like it. You basically have to ignore that sensation completely and learn to tune it out, right? Because it's not meant to look like anything. You just have to trust that it's going to eventually turn into the thing that you're trying to do at some point. But if you stop to look at it in its current state, it's not going to look like that, right? And I think this is quite a tricky thing to visualize or understand unless you try it for yourself, right? It's kind of like the ugly points of a painting, where it just isn't. It's not supposed to be, right? You've just blocked in the general gist of it. This is really apparent when you're doing a portrait of someone, right? And it's like, it doesn't even look like them, or it doesn't even look like a human. It's really easy to get caught up in that thinking, getting worried, right? That it isn't going to plan, and then come the self-doubt talks, where it's like, well, does that mean I suck? Like, I'm so bad at this. Like, this is so hard. Like, I'm just blah 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 blah. And then it's like, oh, I feel like giving up, right? Because I'm doing it wrong. And it's like, no, you just need to find a way to sit with it and keep going, no matter what, right? Like, you know, it sucks in the moment. It's not meant to be good, but it will be good, right? As long as you sit with it long enough, right? You just trust that it will turn up as you wanted it. And I think that kind of mindset kind of applies to everything we're doing. Oh, sorry, I should talk about what I'm doing. I've just come in here with a soft airbrush to add in some of the softer edges that we were talking about. The effect is, you can see that it looks a little bit smoother now. Right, if I zoom all the way in, you can see how we no longer have these sharp edges here. Oops. And then it kind of smooths it out. Right, that's the type of thing you can look for in a photo. Is where do the hard edges sit, and where do the soft edges sit? I'm kind of using that as a baseline. We can kind of work out what it is we're trying to do. So I look at this jellyfish and I see it's basically an entire gradient. Like the whole thing is basically a gradient. And I also don't like what's going on here. I think the form is all off, so I'm just gonna do this real quick. Right, and I think it's just not worth worrying about. Like, oh, I think this is much harder when you're working traditionally, right? So like there's a physical investment of material, right? If you erase over the thing, that's like money down the sink type of situation going on, right? So it makes it hard to paint if you're worried about that. So I quite like digital for that reason, where it's just like you have absolutely no qualms painting over it. I think that mindset is also good for traditional, but I think it starts becoming a limiting factor, right? If you've got piles and piles of paper, like they're just screwed up, it starts getting a bit. It feels a bit bad, right? If nothing is turning out how you want it to at all, and I don't know, it starts getting a bit frustrating. It's a bit easier to do when you're working digitally, right? So I just painted over it. I can't even remember what we did, because it wasn't right. I think it was going to lead us down the wrong path, so we'll just paint over it. Instead, talking through it, right, we now understand there's a secondary sphere inside that we're now trying to depict. Right, the hard part is going to be working out how to get that effect of the inner ball. I think the approach is wrong, right? Like that's the issue that I'm now facing with this thing, because it doesn't look quite right. What the thing that we're doing here isn't quite right, so we need to change tact. Maybe it isn't painting with the hard brush that we need. I think instead, because there's so many gradients, we should switch to something that blends a bit nice. Excuse me. That blends a bit nicely. I'm quite a fan of this painter brush, because it gives a nice smoothness to it. Can't really show it on that layer, right? So you see, it acts more like paint. That when I do this, I can kind of do something a bit more smooth. And now this is when we start considering the forms. See, as I'm going, I'm changing the direction that my brush is moving. Right? Ideally, I wouldn't have gone over it with the second pass, but whatever. Okay, so that gives us the shape that we're after, but it's not quite right, right? We wanted a bit of the translucency of the jellyfish, so we can literally do that. In digital, by adding in some of the translucency. So now we can start seeing a little bit of what's underneath. I'll tidy it up a little bit because the shape is a bit strange. You also notice that I'm working on a separate layer for this. Right? There's certain things that I'm doing which aren't possible if we're working pen and paper. But if we're working digitally, we might as well use the full range of the capabilities. Right? If you don't like it, you can just change it. So I see the curve of this thing is not quite matching. The peak kind of hits, should be about here, but it's kind of lopsided on this right side. So we're going to try and nudge it over. We're going to try and nudge it just slightly. Right? When we're painting, we go for vibes. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect. Obviously, the tidier and all that is the nicest it's going to be look at. But in the moment, like, you don't want to be worrying about that. Just worry about getting it as good as you can. Right? That's kind of the better idea, right? But if I look at this thing, it's playing a bit of an optical illusion on my eyes right now. This back panel is so bright, it kind of looks like a ring that sits on a weird plane in comparison to this orb that we've just drawn. So right now, we're going to use our eyedropper tool, which is set to take the color from the layer that we're currently sitting on. And we're going to shove that layer back. We're going to shove it back by making it slightly brighter. Use the same brush. I just want to check the logic. I've said a sentence, and now I'm not sure if it's 100% what I'm going for. But it seems to have worked. So let's roll with it, right? We can stick that. I'm liking how this is shaping up a bit more. Right, I think we should come in here with the soft brush again. I think when you're rendering, we're in this together, don't worry about it. When we're rendering, you're jumping around a lot. We friggin' pronouns there. I also noticed I haven't included the back of this big orb. So we're gonna have to work out how to do that too. So using a similar logic, right? This is technically the opening of the orb inside. I don't know about this, Chief. Pure vibes, isn't it? Something like that. Kinda, eh? Maybe. So I think that's jumping out at me at the moment are these strands, these bands of color coming out of the end. Right, I think we should try and fix that up because I don't like how that looks right now. I'm just going to cover it up. Again, same as before. Right, those initial colors, they help give us an idea of where things should go, and if they're wrong, well, we just change it. Like, there's no love lost. It doesn't particularly matter that they're off or right, but they got us here. So let's just seal off this. Right, so now we have kind of a capsule type situation going on. How are we gonna approach this? So we're thinking about what does this actually represent? Right. Clean up a little bit here. Right, so we kind of want some dangly tentacles coming off the bottom rim of the larger outer orb. those are the functional parts of what I'm looking at on the other screen. It looks like, I think. I still need to establish where did the tentacles actually attach from. Like, I seem to be getting conflicting answers. Because it seems like depending on the species, the tentacles look a bit different. I believe the one that we're looking at, the dangly bits come down from the center point and then trail down like this. Something like that, right? So that's what... Hello? What did I just do? Okay, that's what we're going to be trying to do. So how can we do that? So now we want to get a bit more granular with it. I think having a non-destructive approach seems like a smart call for this, because we would just want to test how we're going to do it, and if we like it we can keep it, and if not we just delete the layer. It's all good. Because if you imagine if we paint on the layer itself and we don't like it, well then it's going to be a lot more difficult to come back from it. So I notice the tentacles are quite bright. I think maybe we can go for quite an ethereal type effect. So we're going to introduce a layer mask. Blend mode, what do you call it? Because it kind of looks a bit glowy too. I figured we could do the glow at the very end to really make it pop. But how we're going to approach these dangly bits is the point. So we need something that's going to sit inside, but we're going to draw it on top, if that makes sense. So we want something that lightens it up. And we're going to use something quite dark. Excuse me while I work out which one. Hard light, maybe. I suppose the only way to know is to just test it. Overlay might work. It's also not quite thick enough, so let's something like this. Also notice they kind of look like ribbons, so we might introduce a bit of swirliness to it. I see 3, 4 dangly bits. Just gone over the edge. Not great. There. Maybe a bit of a smaller one coming at the back. I'm also now going to ignore this inner ring, right? Because now we're thinking about a bit of depth to it. These larger ones, which are a bit closer to us, they're gonna peter out too. So they're going to be a bit thicker. As we're always doing this, we also want to be thinking about our values all the time, by the way. So notice, what did the thing that we just do? What did that just do to the values? So let's check. Did it make it darker? A little bit. We can check that by adding a new layer. We're going to fill it in with pure black. Whoops. Right. Excuse me, the file is quite large, so we switch that to saturation. See, now we turned it grayscale. This helps us see the values much easier, in case we're not sure, right? So we added that overlay layer, and we've made it darker. We've made it darker in comparison to the thing that should be the darkest. So I'm not sure if overlay is the correct path, but perhaps hardlight is. Or can we switch it? Maybe we should be taking different approach. Maybe instead of this color, we actually use something actually brighter on the same overlay layer that we just did. Now we're talking about value relationships. Still too dark, I think. I'm looking to try and make the tentacles at the bottom here brighter than the thing. Maybe that's the wrong approach too. Maybe instead of that, we should be darkening this completely. Right? Maybe the approach was incorrect. Maybe what we were trying to change was incorrect. Maybe the thing representing the darkest wasn't dark enough. Maybe we just didn't start dark enough. Maybe that was the issue. Because I don't know if I said it right, that we were deciding the darkest point. I think our darkest value just wasn't dark enough. So now when we switch back to the saturation, we'll see, relatively speaking, these things are now going to be a bit brighter compared to the dark. Okay. So it isn't quite popping yet, right? Because we've not added in any fancy effects or anything yet. We're not worrying about that. We're just going for shapes. We're just going for shapes, relationships, and just getting the general idea down properly first. And then we can worry about tidying up, making it look nice. Did I move this layer? How did that happen? Weird. Okay. Next we want the bright ring inside as well. It's like 4 additional spherical objects inside. That's what we're aiming for. So we'll use something brighter. I'm just going to paint it in. I'm not going to think too much about it. Right. I think the other caveat is it's really easy to overthink and get into your own head about what you're doing. So you want to be accurate, but you also don't want it to hold you back from just trying it. You can always change it, right, if you don't like it. But if you never make a decision, it's never getting anywhere, right? Like you can't spot a mistake if there is no mistake to to look at. Still think there's a bit of an optical illusion going on. With that back ring. I don't know. I think what's happening is it's too thick. So it's coming up with the illusion that it's closer to us than it actually is. Okay, so we'll tidy that up. We're making it a bit thinner. That's a bit of foreshortening, technically. Some perspective stuff, isn't it? See how all the different elements come into play. And that if you're missing any of it, it doesn't really work. Something like that, right? I think at this point we want to make sure the edges are tidied up, and once we add in the bright points, it's going to make it really pop and really tie it all together, right? Because right now it feels a bit flat, right? It's like I don't have to explain it. So you're looking at that, it looks like a pile of circles, right? I think. The thing that's gonna really make it feel alive is what we do with the light afterwards. That's okay. We'll worry about that in a second. Right now we want to make sure that we've planned out that everything is working. Shape-wise, value-wise. We just want to tidy up any oddities, let's call it, along the way. Any potential pitfalls before we start worrying about details or anything like that. See, it's already glowing because I'm drawing on the overlay layer. It looks a bit strange because I think there's this weird visual thing happening where it's going up. We wanna see if we can nudge that down a bit. So we wanna find that layer and paint it downwards. Something like this. We find. We don't need perfect. We don't need perfect. We want passable though. We want something decent. Because this is gonna get seen by someone else, right? So we want to make it as good as we can in the moment, without overworking it or anything like that, right? So when someone sees this, they're not gonna worry too much about the same things, right? When someone else sees your work, they don't see all the small imperfections that you see, right? All the different nitpicky things in moments, right? They're not going to see that. They're going to see that's a jellyfish, right? They're not going to see all this. They're not going to hear about all of this. Not unless they come watch this video and listen to it, right? They're not going to know about it. See, we have a bit of an angular issue, right? Again, where things feel slightly lopsided to the right. Now, at this point, either we redraw everything again, or we just make a mental note of it, of like, this is something that's happening. Try and pay a bit more attention to it. I think that slant is kind of happening because I'm also looking at the screen, talking at you, and all these extra elements are now feeding into making it that I'm not fully paying attention to exactly what I'm doing, right? If I was a bit more focused, I'd probably nudge it along, fix it as I went. That's okay, right? It's okay. But we know it's there. It's very subtle though. Like I think most people wouldn't even perceive it. So we can do a bit of quick touch-ups to just try and rebalance it slightly. We're not gonna fuss too much about it because I think ultimately it's not that important. Not for this, right? This is just a study. If it was a full illustration or something, we'd consider fixing it up. Right, if it's for clients or what have you, right? Like it is gonna matter, right? Because they want it to be good, you know. Right, a material study is just like so you can do this without any stakes, right? It doesn't like if it's not perfect, like what's the worst thing? What's the worst thing that happens? Someone laughs at you on Reddit or something. Like it doesn't matter. Yeah, that's slightly better, right? It looks a bit more roundish. Oh, it kind of looks like a little flower on top. It's kind of fun. Nice, right? I think that's already, like, the slight touch-ups already makes it just a smidge better, right? we do want to move on with our lives a little bit, so let's get to the brightening of things. So let's just merge this down because it's now quote unquote done. See, I haven't done it with some of these because it's kind of, if you merge it, it's not going to merge properly. Right, so what's our goal here? We're trying to make it feel luminescent by whacking up the contrast, right? If we zoom all the way out, we notice it doesn't feel too punchy yet, right? But now we have a few of the dynamics down. We're now going to push those colors on this layer. This is like the polish, start of the polish phase, right? But you won't be able to do any of the polishing until we have this base structure down, right? But the base structure is also not that impressive. So the one thing flows into the next, right? So I've become a fan of hard light layer. It's a lot of fun. What hard light layer does is it acts as a multiply layer in the dark areas when you're using a darker color, and it acts like an overlay layer when you're using a brighter color. So we really want to make the outer rims as bright and glowy. You see, you can't get this effect, this glowy visual, right? If we switch it to a normal, which is just like painting over the layer, it doesn't look the same, right? But then if you flick it to one of these other, like multiply makes it darker, screen makes it brighter, color dodge makes it brighter still. Add glow, do something similar. Add glow makes it brighter than that. You see, when we talked about it doesn't have the ceiling to push it, right? This is where all that comes into play. But all of these blend modes all looked a bit different and work a bit differently. So you want to pay attention to the one you're using, why and when. Right, because it does drastically change how things appear. You don't have to use all of them. Like most people use multiply, I think, for applying shadows because it's straightforward. But if you want to achieve certain visual effects and whatnot, getting a hang of all the different ones and options available to you it's very helpful. Okay, and I think some people like something like hard light layer because it can do both, right? If you can do both, you don't have to muck around with balancing this, seeing how that change affects that other layer, and having all these different effects like overlapping and trying to juggle all these different layers and not being fully certain what it's going to look like at the very end. If you keep it simple, you know exactly what changes you're having when you do something. And you can tell when it's a mistake or when it's something unintended. If it's something that you did, you will know how to replicate it next time you want it to look like that. But if you're guessing, then it's just not going to be possible. So I'm just going a bit slowly now. I'm trying to make sure I'm doing it right. Sorry if it's a bit quiet. What I'm doing is I'm trying to maintain the value relationships. I don't know. I'm technically changing the values themselves, but the relationships are what I'm trying to stick with here. It's like, okay, I'll push this bit a bit more. I'm aiming for a bit of brightness. We're also doubling up a little bit on the stuff that we've already done, but that's okay. That's okay. I've done that, and now it's kind of highlighted the tentacles a little bit here. Kind of looks like it's being reflected, which is cool. Yes. So it does take a lot of focus, doesn't it? Okay, next thing I want to do is make sure the brightness is okay. So I think it looks a bit uncanny, a bit cartoony when it's full bright like this. So we can turn down the translucency to try and blend it in a little bit. It's quite nice. Okay, it's also not a perfect science, right? No one can tell you what, like, it's just as valid. Maybe someone likes that more than what I'm doing here. I don't know. You see, when you're the artist, you can decide. And if you're on a project, then you're gonna have certain visual preferences that we're gonna be working towards. Just to make sure everyone's working on the same page, right? But when you're doing this just for yourself, like, it's okay. You pick what's nice. Just reflexively saved. I was like, oh yeah, I like that. Save. Okay, I can see it's a bit brighter on the outside, but we can worry about that in a second. The thing that has caught my eye is the kind of misty effect of inside the jellyfish itself. So we're going to see if we can replicate that with a bit of a translucent thing. So now we want something a bit more textures. It kind of looks like a gradient, but it's not quite right. It's almost like a wispy, smoky effect. Of a plastic bag. It's a bit clear. A bit murky too. I'm not sure how to best approach that. So we'll just try things, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll change it. So I'm on another layer here. I've applied it on a soft light layer because I'm not sure. Maybe we'll just start with that and go from there. Right. I think already it's like, yeah, that's kind of the effect we're going for. Right, we kind of want it to look a bit blurrier, like it's filled almost. Maybe the color's wrong. Maybe that's why. Make it a bit bluer. Okay, let's see if we can create a gradient inside as well, because I think it's like lighter on the outside. So maybe something to think about here is, where is the light source coming from? Right, it'll be somewhere above, because we've drawn the dark ocean thing underneath here. From above, the brightest point is gonna be like along this edge somewhere, right? But it's a jellyfish. It lives deep underwater, so the amount the sun is now piercing onto it is not going to be that much. Okay, but that's the kind of line of thinking that we're going for. It's as if this thing was swimming a bit closer to the surface. What would be interacting with it, right? And in that situation, what happens to the light is it pierces this membrane a little bit, but not too much. I'm just going fast. I'm going fast because there's not technically a correct. There's no one size fits all for this, what I'm doing. Okay, but you can see as if it were subsurface scattering. And some of that bright permeates the membrane at the top and then kind of has this, okay, effect. Okay, the thing I want to do is add a bit more texture to what we've just done. So we're gonna do that with, I don't know, something like a multiply layer feels right. And then we're just grabbing one of these brushes. It doesn't really, it's called a thing, but we're not going to use it for that purpose, right? It's called a cloud, but it's not going to be a cloud. So we can ignore the naming, right? What we care about is the fact that the property of the brush is it has a lot of variation within it. That's what we're going for, right? But we're not going to use it as if it were a cloud. What we're doing here is, you can barely see it here, but we're just creating some tension within the image. So if we zoom out, you can see it has a bit more depth, right? But you wouldn't have seen it because it's so subtle. It's so subtle that you wouldn't even know that this brush is being used, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? It's just that something is there adjusting the values on a deeper level, right? If we zoomed all the way in, we'll see that it's slightly different in all these different areas now. Maybe it's harder to see, right? What the variation is isn't so much as important as there's something there, right? And we can now merge that. Merge all of them. Okay, quite happy. Okay, I think we can also push the bright highlight just a smidge more. Right, at this point we're aiming for something almost electric inside this. That's not right. Nope. Glow dodge maybe. This isn't right. This isn't right. Something that I did. It's not letting that interact properly. So we've just run into an issue. Why is that happening? Now we have to do a quick bit of troubleshooting. Why is that not interacting the way that I'm expecting it, right? When I draw over the top here, I expect this color to be placed here. It means one of these layers is not allowing it. We've discovered it. What is this layer? Let's see, it's the bell layer. Right, so whatever that layer is, whatever it's doing, isn't letting this interact properly. So now we fixed it. There we go. Live troubleshooting, eh? We can get back to it. We're going for a lightning type effect, I think is what I was saying. Overlay? We want something quite striking, so we'll just try a few. I think color dodge might be the right one, but it might be a bit too bright. I don't know. Maybe it's fine. So I'm now going to switch brush because this one feels like I'm not getting enough control now over what I'm trying to do. I want something quite precise. So maybe just a regular pen of some description. Right, we just want something fine to really get in there with. Highlighting the thing that we're trying to do. Right, I think with the other brush, because it was moving so much, it makes it quite difficult to get in with what we're doing. Okay, so something cool that we can do now is duplicate this below. So make it a second layer. The same thing. We're going to switch that and we're going to lay in some different effects. Okay, so we switch it to a glow layer. See, now the way these two are now interacting is because they're now overlapping and trying to compete with one another. this is gonna happen because you have a different translucent levels. So let's do a bit of Gaussian blur. Gaussian blur. Just a smidge. Right, this is something fun you can do with glows. You can see how along the outer edge it kind of looks like it's now glowing. This is really helpful for special effects, swords that are glowing, magic, that sort of any thing that you want to be bright like that. It's very nice, but you don't want to overdo it, right? Just a touch really makes it pop. But too much, it makes everything blurry. Right? If one thing is glowing, then it stands out. If everything is glowing, nothing is glowing. Right. So the next thing I want to do is do something about this tentacle situation, because I think music's popping off, eh? We'll do this. What I want is along some of the edges, like the outside edge, I want it to be a bit brighter, but not too much. Right? Because we're not going. It's still too much. Right? I don't want to be able to see it so much. Maybe this is the wrong brush too, I don't know. Maybe something a bit more textured is what we're going for. So I'm going to switch to this textured brush. I'm trying to emulate the feeling of the ribbons rather than, because it's not that important, right? It's not the main draw. We just want to know that it's there. You can imagine if you're making everything highly detailed, your eyes don't know where to focus on. Right? Like, people aren't going to be able to tell what's important and what is just there for decoration or whatever, right? But then if someone stops long enough to look, they will be able to see all the little intricate details that you've added in. If they want to, because they're having fun, right? So they're going to look a bit closer. But really, like, this level of detail, maybe people aren't going to see it. Right? You can barely tell it's there. That's good. We don't want to know that it's there, but we want to feel that it's there. Do the same again for this. Just trying to capture the center of the ribbons without worrying too much about the intricacies. Nice. Right, and the next thing is, I'm not too sure about the colors themselves. I think they almost don't look blue enough. It's such a terrible sentence. What did I just say? Not blue enough? It's all blue. it's all blue. That makes no sense. Come on, dude. Try and pull it all together with a glaze layer. I don't know what I'm trying to say. a lot of this stuff is like you do all this like automatically without thinking. 'Cause you've done it so much, if you don't think twice about it, you know, trying to enunciate or elaborate on what you're doing all the time. I don't know. It's kind of weird, right? Like that. This is what I mean. Like, it's bluer. It's too blue. So we keep cranking it down until we get to a point where it's like, yeah. Right. Maybe overlay layer isn't the right one. Maybe add. Because add is literally adding the blue. This super saturated. Sorry, saturation is chroma. How bright it is by moving left and right. Left and right on the color palette. Hue is going around the edge. So when I say it's not blue enough, I'm referring to the hue. See what I mean? Is this is what it looks like with the adjustment and without. Okay. In doing so, it's also brightened up the bottom. So I don't know if that's what we want. So we might just take that out of the add layer. It won't be as unified, but it'll make it punchier. Perhaps. Do a bit of painting magic here as well. Make it look like it's emerging out of nothing. something coming out of the depths, perhaps. Oops, I did not mean to click that button. That's gonna take forever to load. Okay, so we'll go back to the cloud. We're also in like complete overtime, by the way. Just doing a bunch of stuff, you know, for the sake of being a painting, you know, at this point. Oops, see. Wrong layer. Classic. So I'm coming in with a bit of a cloud. I want it to look like it's emerging from absolutely nothing. Even though it's just a circle. It's not a perfect shape, is it? I keep noticing issues with the angles, but it's really not worth worrying about now. But it's something to keep in mind, right? Like this back angle is way too high. So is this one. It's not quite connecting, right? This is like kind of not good enough. Kind of not good enough for what we're aiming for. So we're gonna try and tidy up a little bit without getting too into the weeds. Needs a blessing in disguise. Because I wouldn't have noticed that technically these ribbons should have been on top. So that's when we're taking into consideration 3D form. How it exists in 3D space, right? Because technically this line at the back here is behind these things which are dangling in the middle, right? So the amount of overlap that we're having is going to affect how much that we see of what we're doing, even in a small thing like this. Okay, so something else we can do now is final touches, right? I think making it feel like it's underwater by adding little bits of plankton, bits floating around it, in and around it. Will make it feel like a painting, even though it's just a little snippet here, right? Not necessary, by the way, as a side note. We're doing a material study, it's not important to do this, but I think just cause I'm recording this, it might be more fun to watch this process. Right. We're adding a lot of little things that really aren't that important. So we don't want them to stand out, but we want them to be there. Just for a bit of visual interest. So we're going to hand paint a couple of the bigger ones, which are a bit closer, and we're going to spray in the smaller ones. Right. Just to emulate that it's in something, right? Right, these aren't going to have a huge effect on the values. Like, it's not going to change the overall structure, which is the key takeaway. But it's a nice little bits of visual interest, you know, for if you are looking at it up close from afar, right? It's just going to feel a bit more lived in. Even though it's just a little material study. Right, all these little speckles and marks, like you can't even see it, right? But then when you get really close, that's when you can see it. We're almost done. Nope, that's too much. We want really small speckles. Really small speckles. Anything? No, we're just gonna hand draw them. You can layer the effects with the blend modes as well, by the way. Like if you're doing stars, if you're doing little effects like this, like they work really well with glows and blurring, things like that. Okay. Makes it look like it's a bit sparkly. This is definitely excessive. Like none of this that we're doing here has anything to do with the material at this point. Like this is just for fun. I think when someone sees it later, they'll be like, "What is all that?" It's fine. And then I kind of want maybe a bit of a greener, like something a bit blurry maybe. I'll do it as splotches and then Gaussian blur it. Right, we introduce a bit of color theory here too, if we want. So our overall tone is monochromatic, right? Everything is in this bluish range. See in this range, right? If we're sticking with that theme, we don't want to change it stray too far out. Like, we're doing a little bit here and there can make it feel punchy. Right, we'll just do little bits and bobs here and there. I think this might look prettier if we do stray a little further than the image. Kind of look like a bit of a space jellyfish, I think. Just have a bit of fun with it, you know, like it's hard work doing it, I think, especially earlier, right? Like there's so much stuff to worry about, to think about, that if you don't try to have fun with it, you're gonna burn yourself out, right? Like, it's just not mentally good to worry so much, I think. Oh, you're making art, like, at the end of the day. Like, you should still enjoy it, you know. Like, you work hard, but you should still enjoy it. That's why you're working hard, right? Like, I think it's easy to forget that sometimes. Now I want to check, is this glowing enough? Can we make it glow more? I think we can. I want to push the contrast of anything that isn't supposed to be bright. We'll do that all as a hard light layer again. Push it all the way down. We'll paint it in using this brush. I don't know, I've locked it because I think I really like it. This painterly watercolor one. This is completely changing the color, huh? Maybe that's okay. Kind of stepping outside the realm of material study though. Maybe it's okay. Maybe that's fine. Maybe it wasn't just a material study after all. Maybe we just wanted to make something pretty. Is to add a bright highlight at the very edge. We'll do that as a very bright white. We might even be able to fake a bit of reflection if we do this. Technically, it doesn't have this. I think it might make it look better. We'll just see. Oop. Can I lock this? It's so annoying. I keep doing that. Bloody hell. Alright. Anyway, we'll just pull through the light of what we just did, which is technically not there, right? Like, that's where we start enhancing light as well, by the way. It's more like a stylistic choice, rather than depicting anything that actually exists. It's just personal preference. I like bright lights, high contrast. Okay, kind of looks like a galaxy. Bit of a spacey vibe to it. How does it compare to everything else? Does it still look like it's part of it? Yeah. Probably. Something different. But yeah, that's how we ended up here. Right. That was it. I'm gonna keep going until 400 was the original number. That might feel excessive. we'll see how we go. The original was supposed to be stopping at 80. That's 2 pages worth. But I don't know if it's diminishing returns. I have no idea. So I'm gonna aim for 400 and see how we get on. This will be posted on my blog, where I'm detailing my journey and all sorts of stuff, so we can learn how to do this for ourselves, right from the perspective of someone who didn't know what they were doing like a year ago at all, to I can do this now, which is very cool. Then anything else pertaining to this material study is going to be posted on Kara, where I'm going to be posting anything that takes a lot more effort. So if you want the highlights, head on over there. If you want to see the full lot, go to my Tumblr. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in. Hope it helps. Hope you had fun enjoying watching whatever that was. Right. Bye bye.